Hi and welcome back to another episode of Across the Ocean, your underwater videography show here on YouTube. Now in today's episode we'll pick up where we left off in the last episode with our 1 minute underwater video editing challenge. And obviously I've got my co-host James with me again today. Hello James, how are you mate?
Hey Matthias, good to see you mate, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't wait to get into this editing or fine-tuning of that edit that we started last month. I think we did very well, and I'm really curious to see how you get along or how you got along with the color correction of that edit. That's the portion that we'll look at into today's video. Now, as we mentioned in last month video and last month episode already, guys, if you do want to give it a go at editing that footage that James has shared with me, he has actually made that folder publicly available. Link will be down in the video description, so you can go and download all that same footage and see if you can come up with a better story, a better edit than what we the two of us did in the last month episode and the one that we're going to be working with today. Now, with any further ado, I want to pass it on to you, James, and let's talk about the color correcting process that you use in Premiere Pro.
Yeah, absolutely, Matthias, and this was probably the most challenging part of the edit because this footage that I selected for us was intentionally garbage. This was not a film shoot. I was not paying attention to filming. It's shot on an old camera before I had a YouTube channel on one of my trips to Cayman, diving with a friend of mine, and yeah, it was a mess. And I didn't have a red filter on the camera. Just everything that we've told people to do in this series of videos, I didn't do. I'm not shooting in 60 frames per second. It's not 4K. Don't have a red filter. Like, it's a disaster. So I knew that color correcting was going to be a challenge. But at the same time, let's take some garbage footage and see if we can make it somewhat decent. All right, so we've got our timeline here, my 60-second effort that we saw in the previous video. And now we're just going to work on the color. And as I said already, sorry for that, Matthias, but we completely made a mess of this video. This was footage I didn't care about at all. But we're going to tidy up and see what we can do with it. As you can see, it was all shot on the same dive, but there were changeable light conditions. It was sunny, then cloudy, and all that kind of stuff. So as I scroll through here, you're going to see some deep blue water to some greenish reef scenes, and it's all a little bit of a mess. Obviously, I'm not going to color grade every single clip here, but let me just give you a couple of examples. So first off here, the shallow reef, like you say, it's leaning very heavily towards the green. Here we are in Premiere Pro. I'm going to come up to the color tab and get my lumetri settings on the side here. And I always start by doing some basic correction and looking at my scopes, and you can see that the light is very much limited on the Ansel Adams scale between sort of 12, 13 and 60. So it's a very compressed scene, not a lot of dynamic range. Let's see what we can do with that. If we slide the whites over, we can milk it, but we're going to start to get a little bit of graining in there, maybe bump it up a little bit to 70 on the peaks. Can we drop the blacks down? Yeah, a little bit. So there we go. We've already kind of corrected the exposure a bit more. Can we go? Let's push it out there. You can look on the scope here and see that it's just starting to cap. So I don't want to push it any more than that. Otherwise we're going to get grain and we're going to lose details. Highlights and shadows, we can play with these as much as we want. We can bump them all the way up and all the way down, of course. But let's bring that in. And it's very much, my technique is very much trial and error. I'm just going for it, having a go, seeing what looks good, adjust, look, adjust, look. I'm actually normally on that subject as well. I like to make the screen a little bit bigger and the scope's a little bit larger, so I've got a better area to play with here. As for color correction, well, I could just take my automatic white balance selector here and pick on a white area of the neutral sand, but as you can see, that's going to completely tax the image because I wasn't using a red filter and there's no red information to work from, so it just goes all the red and all the yellow. And that doesn't really work very well. So probably the best we're going to be able to do there. And then the secondary tool I would use for color correction is to come down to the color wheels and start to push some reds back in on all three midtones, highlights and shadows, and probably work it down somewhere like this. A little boost in the midtones, highlights, drop it into the shadows. We'll try. And again, when you've got garbage footage like this, if you still want to use it, you can absolutely go over the top of it and just make it completely artistic. So that's what the creative tab is for. Come up here, I'm gonna have a look for some LUTs. I have one that I made myself. If I go into my lookup table packs for blue water reef, very simple. Slap that on, it adds a lot of red in. Obviously that's incredibly intense. So we just bring that down, it gives it kind of a Cousteau Kodak 79 look. And again, what I would do from there is I would just copy the settings on that one. Let's see, it's going across to here. Paste, and then I would go through and make tweaks accordingly. So that's good. So the second thing I was going to do is everyone that features our hero, our character here, is I'm going to drop the saturation on that. All the way down. We can reset these levels. We can go to color wheels. Why is that still in the red? Oh, we can turn that off, that's why. There we go. Let me just remove attributes. Just take that basic correction, take the saturation, slide it all the way down, and again you can play with this, make it a little bit more artistic. Drop the shadows all the way, boost the highlights somewhere to around there, and just have a general play around for it. I'm not the world's greatest color grader. I work incredibly hard to be as average as I am, but with a little bit of sort of messing about, if you will, you can get some halfway decent results. Turn off the wheels there, again, come back up, drop the shadows some more, boost some contrast, make it look real funky. So there we go. It's another one we can make into black and white dead easy. Let's boost the highlights, bring the whites up a bit, drop the blacks down, drop the shadows, push the contrast. There we go. So that's about it. And then one other technique that I also would do sometimes, if I just come back into the editing, is use what's called an adjustment layer. So an adjustment layer just puts a little top coat on all of your clips. So if I come here to adjustment layer, select, it's going to give me the resolution the video's in. Okay, fantastic. Appears in my project window here, and I can just take that out. Ooh. I can just take that out, pop it over the top of the clips, spread it out, and then if I wanted to add a LUT or a look, I can do that and it'll apply to all the clips below it. I can even color grade the adjustment layer and it will apply to all the clips underneath it. So something else I do sometimes if I've got a lot of clips with very similar lighting conditions, but as I said, this was probably too much of a challenge. It was absolute garbage, and I think that's about the best we can do with it. I'm struggling here, buddy. What do you think?
Well, I think this is as good as you will probably get it. The thing is with footage from action cameras, especially if they are not the most current models, if they've been out on the market for some while, the problem is that with those tiny little sensors, they are not very light sensitive and they record in rather small bit rates. So the problem is if you don't get the your color correction or your white balance right in camera, it's really difficult to adjust that in post-production, simply because you don't have the information, as you were showing us perfectly with that example of no red color in the image whatsoever. And we're not magicians. We can't add red to an image where there is no red. I mean, you can, but it just looks crap.
Or
so
incredibly time-consuming.
Yeah, exactly. And you're probably not really going to be very, very happy with the result anyway, because it's close to impossible to make a shot that has not been taken with proper white balance, make it look like a shot that has been taken with proper white balance and lighting. It's just really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is, if I can just kind of say something here that I'm going to mention later on in my edit, when we talk about my edit as well, is that I think we should really try to go into a blue and greenish look for this film. It's going to make it a lot easier when it comes to the editing, rather than trying to put too much red and orange in there, or even go black and white. That's a good option too.
Exactly. All right, Matthias, so black and white is an option, doing the best we can to kind of, you know, move the scope more towards the center, even if we can't get it into the red. Let's have a look at what you've got.
Right, thank you very much, James, for sharing the insights of your color correcting and color grading process in Premiere Pro. Now let's have a quick look at how I edit my footage in Final Cut. It's not that different to what you do. The tools are pretty much the same, and as we mentioned before, it really depends on what kind of footage you have, to which extent you can actually color correct and grade the footage. Some of the footage that was in that folder was very easily gradable, like for example the diver that is getting into the water here at the beginning, because it's very close to the surface. You've got plenty of natural ambient light coming into the water there. Also, there is a clip right here with the moray eel underneath that coral formation. Obviously, we're using lights to bring some artificial light into that scene. You can clearly see how that clip stands out from most of the other clips where there was no lights. Clips like these ones here where there was no lights, and they're basically bluish greenish. So I made quite a conscious decision right at the beginning to keep the whole edit and keep the look of the film towards the greenish and bluish side. It's just going to make my life a lot easier when it comes to editing these things. I didn't really think about making it black and white, and that's okay. I haven't really experimented too much with black and white videography myself yet, but I think that, I mean, in the end, if you go diving, this is exactly what you see. It's not the very colorful stuff, or most of the time it's not, unless you're very close and you got really good visibility. So this is probably quite real life, the stuff that we see in the footage here. Now, the way I normally do the color correction is that I always adjust my exposure first. So I try to, and if you look at one of those clips here, I try to, let's have a look at this one, this one here. I try to have the top exposure just around 100 and the bottom, the darks, just around or above the 0 mark. This is normally the exposure that I'm going for. Now, if the image is really compressed, if there's not a lot of information inside the image itself, you can't really stretch it all that far. So if we look at another clip, you will see that this clip here, for example, doesn't really have the same sort of information in it. It's all in all just much darker, and therefore I can't really stretch it too much, otherwise I'm just going to destroy the entire clip. So once I've corrected the exposure on all of the clips, then I normally try to get in a little bit more contrast, and I try to match the clips as best as possible from one clip to another. And this is normally the toughest part, and normally the part that takes the longest for me to just match those clips, because I find it a bit distracting and not very nice to look at a finished product if the clips are not at least slightly matching to each another. So if you've got a first clip and then in kind of a bluish color, and then you've got a second clip which is completely green, it's quite obvious that these clips that they don't belong together and they've just been mixed in the edit, and I just don't really like that too much, so I try to make it as close as possible. It doesn't always work, but if you put a little bit of time and effort in there, you can actually achieve a okayish result in most cases. Now, same as you have done, James, I also used the color wheels to then shift the color slightly to the desired area. As I said before, and if we look at the vector scope here, most of the clips, they will be in that cyan blue range down here, and I purposely left them down there. At least they kind of match. This is one that doesn't really match. It's a little greenish, and I wasn't really able to put it more to the bluish side. But other than that, most of the clips do match in that section and stay in that section there, which is quite okay. And that's basically it when it comes to the color correction. So for a very basic color correction, as mentioned before, adjusting the exposure, maybe adding a little more contrast, a little more saturation into the images, and then just trying to match them to one another as the best you can, really. That's your basic color correction. Now, once you've done that, if you want to go the extra mile, you can also put like an adjustment layer on top of it, and maybe put a lookup table on top of all of your clips to give them a little bit of a stylized look. I haven't done this on this edit, but if I'm, for example, doing stuff for clients, most of the time I will add a lookup table as an overlay on top of my finished grade, to make sure to give it that little bit of extra attention and extra attention to detail, if you want to put it that way.
I agree, I like to use that too, and it also helps with what you're talking about clip matching. If they all have the same artistic feel with a lookup table, then it homogenizes all the different clips and give them definitely the same feel. So I like to do that, slap an adjustment layer over all the clips that were shot at the same depth, put the lookup table on, adjust the intensity, and it just brings it all together. So completely agree, but I think you did a nice job. I think you made a silk purse out of a pig's ear. That's a very English expression, but it looks absolutely beautiful. So well done, mate. Well done.
Thank you very much. One last thing I want to add on to the lookup table, and I've seen people doing this. I've seen people adding a lookup table as a very first thing when they go into color correcting. I wouldn't do that with underwater footage, because all that underwater footage is most of the time very different. It's very rare that you get footage that is completely the same throughout the entire range of your edit. So always try to match it first as close as possible. Then you've got a good starting point, and you can then apply a lot onto it and make it stylized and the way you really like. But don't be fooled and try to get some magic working by just applying a lot and thinking that this is your color correction and you don't have to do anything else with it. Most of the cases it won't really work.
That's a good point.
At least that's my opinion and what I've learned from my own experience editing underwater footage there. Excellent. So that was basically it. Thank you very much, James, for being here with me today again. As always, an absolute pleasure talking with you about anything to do with filming underwater. For you guys, if you've enjoyed this episode, as always, do hit that like button. You know it means a lot to both of us, and also subscribe to both of our channels if you haven't yet. They will be linked down in the video description. Now, if you've used our invitation and downloaded the footage and done a edit yourself, we would really love to see that edit. So feel free to post a link to the edit that you've uploaded somewhere on the net down in the comment section below, and we'll be more than happy to have a quick look at your edit and comment on it and give you some feedback on what we think, how you did with editing that footage from James. Not much more to say from my side then. Thank you again for your time and for watching, and we will see you in the next episode when we'll go into sound design and the final touches of this edit that we looked at today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye. Bending in there, I'm gonna get artifacts. It's just gonna look not very nice. I think it's the postman again. Can we just have a quick break?
I heard that too. Sorry. I'm gonna get a beverage.
Another package.
You know, just garbage footage. This is just, oh, hang on. Global domination is imminent.
Well, let's start with national domination first. Let's not go overboard right at the beginning.